Thank you for being here. Bryan Papé founded MiiR in 2010 with the dream to create more beauty and generosity in the world. Having inherited his grandfather's entrepreneurial spirit, it wasn't until a life or death ski accident that Bryan fully realized his vision to build a legacy of using business as a tool to positively impact the world. As he set out to build MiiR, he recognized two important things. First, there was a gap in the marketplace for high quality, uniquely designed water bottles. And second, that business and philanthropy can be a powerful combination. Today, MiiR is a mission-driven drinkware company that exists to empower people for a better future. MiiR has given over $1 million toward clean water, a healthy environment, and stronger community initiatives. So welcome to the stage, our good friend, Bryan Papé.
Hello.
Hey, Bryan, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again, friend. It's that the community is excited to have you back. What's cool is that we're going to dig into a couple of topics today. We're going to dig into the mission, how what you have done in your story, but also we're going to look at how other entrepreneurs can start their own journey as well. Plus, you've had some interesting things happen over the past year. So if folks are here with us today that were at SKUCon, there's more to the story as you guys keep growing as an organization. So again, welcome. I'm going to jump right into the first question, Bryan.
Awesome.
I think when people look at your business, one of the things that I think they do is they see this $1 million initiative and they laud that. They want that. They're conscientious entrepreneurs. They want to be a part of that experience. They want to create that themselves. You didn't leap to $1 million. You had to start somewhere. So whether we're a new entrepreneur starting out or whether we just come out of COVID and we want to refocus and open our scope and really orient our business toward purpose-driven initiatives, how do you even know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bobby. And it's again, thanks for having me. It's good to see you and hopefully all the people tuning in. It's good to be with you all again a year later or a year and a half. Wow. I wish we were all in Vegas together. Usually I don't say I wish I was in Vegas, but I wish I was in Vegas.
Same. Right.
But we certainly, it wasn't overnight to get to $1 million. We're about to cross 2 million in granting this year, which still just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah. Wow.
I think the important thing, is just being vulnerable and also just being open about, my experience early on. I got to be honest. So we started giving from day one, and there were times where I thought, gosh, how vain and self-righteous is this to think that, a $5,000 check here, a $10,000 check here, was really going to move the needle when we were really small. And I thought, gosh, if I had stayed in, corporate America or kind of gone a different path and, just kind of saved some money and gave it away, that might have been a better avenue. But I just heads down, kept going, 11 years later, here we are at about $2 million. And so, I think the most important thing that I kind of observed from, my family was that you just have to start, because as soon, if we were here now at the scale at which MiiR is, to think that we would be like, oh yeah, we're just going to go ahead and carve off 3% of our revenue and start giving, people would kind of be like, what about this? And what about that? So it doesn't have to be 3%. It could be whatever kind of makes you slightly uncomfortable. That's kind of what we talk about, is not what makes you comfortable, but just kind of right there at the edge. But just starting, whether it's today, whether you're starting your company or you want to kick off some new initiatives, the important thing is just to start, because it'll start to build up over time, and you make that commitment every day. Now we don't even think about it, not from the fact that we don't think about impact, but we don't even look at it and go, oh, well, what about if we took this and we did some more marketing initiatives or went to some more trade shows. It's just we just know that those dollars are going to go straight to some amazing nonprofits, and we love it. So encouragement is just to start. You're not going to get to $1 million overnight, or maybe you are. That'd be great. But for us, it took a long time. And I always share, people have shared great wisdom with me. And Dennis Madsen, who is one of the former CEOs of REI, kind of scaled from 1 store to about 100 stores. A young entrepreneur at 24 starting my company. It was just, tons of energy, tons of passion. And Dennis is like, Bryan, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I started to
right.
In my head.
Right. Well, one of the things you said to me, unfortunately, there's a lot of heartbreak in the world. There's plenty of places for us to start where we can start contributing. But sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're overwhelmed by where to start. There's so many causes. There's so many things we can do. One comment you made to me is to start in a couple of areas. One was, think about what breaks your heart. I think that'll get closer. And so if you and your team are trying to figure out where we go, what we start with, that's a great dialogue to have with your team. But second, one of the things that you said too was to closely align your product with your mission if you can. And how does that amplify what you're doing, both on the business side as well as your contributions to the community?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first piece there, when people are going, gosh, I want to do something good, I don't know what to, give back to or to be a part of. I always encourage people to look within your company first. A lot of people think it's about what you give out to the community, and while that's important, there's a lot of shoring up to do with benefits. I think it was 2020. We shored up our own benefits and extended medical care. Across our employees, to their spouses, to their kids, like full medical coverage. We have a whole bunch of benefits that we just we said, hey, it's going to cost us a lot of money, but it's really important that we take care of our people throughout COVID and into the future. So, there's some people don't think of that as impact, but I do. I think taking care of your people is super important. So you can look internally before you look externally. And then if you're looking externally and you're drawing some blanks, or you want to know what to really dive into, Andy Stanley, who's a great leader on the East Coast, says, what breaks your heart? And it's, that question cuts so quickly to things that just, you get bummed out. You want to help out. And for my wife and I in 2009, when we first started working on MiiR, we had seen an ad for charity water and saw that close to 1 billion people lacked access to clean water, something that we've always had our entire lives. And so that just, I got goosebumps thinking, gosh, this is, A, I didn't know it was this big of an issue. And B, I want to solve this. I want to help however I can, because water is such a fundamental element of living. And so that question, I think, is just great. It could be community driven. It could be, getting kids onto bicycles. It could be a whole host of things. And I think that question also gets you really motivated, at least for me. So that's, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I love your advice about starting at home, because it's easy to get that backwards, isn't it? It's easy to start out and be giving over here, but then sort of leave this weakened infrastructure, if you will. Something you mentioned to me was that when you started inside, that began to scale your efforts. So it wasn't just you pulling everybody along. By making sure first that you started at home, that helped scale your efforts and everyone got behind the mission. Is that part of your story?
Yeah, certainly. So for us, when I started just, kind of as a solo entrepreneur, it was definitely about, this cup helps provide somebody with clean water, and it was very much external. So our mission is to empower people for a better future. And that was definitely external at the start. And then as we kind of grew, it was one of those things where it was like, again, Dennis Madsen, we were given, a lot of money away, and it was awesome. And yet we weren't really paying our own team. I wasn't paying myself, and we weren't paying our team, necessarily the wages we should have been from market-based in Seattle, And so he said, if you don't take care of your people, you're not going to have a business to take care of others. And I thought, so it really struck us, so we kind of adjusted our model, elevated wages, and we had to make the business sustainable outside of us, choosing to give money away. And then for us, we're kind of linked to, drinkware is sustainable in and of itself, meaning it's not single use. You don't use it and then throw it away. And so this idea that we want to have something that's sustainable, and the product in and of itself is sustainable. So we have a very common link between that, and then also the philanthropy side of us choosing to be generous and to grant money. I think the more you can correlate your product to your purpose, the more of this kind of virtuous circle, this virtuous cycle that you will get. It can be hard. A lot of consultants or service-oriented companies struggle and say, how am I going to do this? But I think there are so many great examples out there. And I think especially when you look at employees or where you're sourcing talent or labor, that can be a huge potential for service and for impact. I think of Dave's Killer Bread. It's kind of a West Coast-ish brand that they might be national now, but Dave, who had been in prison for a variety of things, their business employs a whole host. I can't remember what percentage. It's a very high percentage of their labor is actually people who have transitioned out of prison. So they're very passionate about giving people a second chance and employing them. So their mission is it's bread, it's tasty, it's good, it's organic. But that's not the story. The story is this second chance story. And I think, oftentimes we think it's about, giving bread away to somebody, and that could be a great model potentially. But I think we oftentimes forget about the people element.
Speaking of that full circle, you partner with some great companies, Starbucks and Cotopaxi, just to name a few. In what ways has linking with other companies actually helped fuel the mission?
Yeah, it's been incredible for us from a variety of perspectives. When I started the brand in 2009, launched in 2010, we didn't have a massive marketing budget, to go end consumer. Although we started kind of on Facebook, and this is dating me and dating Facebook, but we would post content on our Facebook page, and 100% of it went to the news feed. So our click-through rate was through the roof. It was very, we were having some good success on Facebook. But as soon as we started this brand partnership model of working with Starbucks and Cotopaxi and Herschel and some of these really great brands, we had this amplification or network effect is kind of what we call it, of, they're telling our story, we're telling their story, we're getting circulation. And now, MiiR is sold in 49 countries around the world, which still to this day just kind of blows my mind. But travel all over Asia, Europe, and we're in some of the most premium coffee shops in the world. And so you get this network effect where it's not just MiiR in and of itself doing this thing. It's MiiR and Cotopaxi. We come together and do co-granting together, which is just, I think that's really special. We've done it with Starbucks as well. We did a beautiful project in Honduras with Starbucks Foundation, partnered with our dollars. So you get this, again, amplification that's just, it usually doesn't happen in just traditional retail environments.
Do you remember the first time that it really awakened your heart where you just went, oh, wow? Well, as a young entrepreneur, what was that first sort of moment where you decided we're going to commit to doing this? It's going to be a little bit and we're going to see what happens. Do you recall what the first sort of, oh, wow moment was when you made an impact?
Gosh, I've been lucky. There's a lot of career kind of highlights for me so far, and certainly the first trip, my wife and I went to Liberia, Africa in 2011, and did some of our first grant making to an incredible nonprofit of locals in Buchanan, kind of near the coast, just doing clean water projects in their own community. So community citizens who are connected through a church that got connected to us. We're doing water projects in this small region, and meeting these people and their passion for serving their community. And, it's interesting thinking back to that time. What's even more special than that is it was so genuine from that community and those people who were helping their other people. These people weren't, wealthy people had flown in, while we had flown in to see it and assist it and see how we could help. Additionally, the folks doing the work on the ground were just compassionate about helping their own people. And there wasn't social media. There wasn't this grandstanding of look at us, look at this. They were just doing it because they knew it was the right thing to do. And I'll never forget that, the generosity of them hosting us. We stayed in their houses and their huts. And it was just like, it was a really, really special moment. I think on the brand momentum side, one of the kind of craziest things that happened was 2013. This company called Patagonia emailed us and out of the blue, and just because we didn't have a phone number on our website at the time, and then we just never answered it because we were too busy shipping packages and working on the business. But Patagonia had reached out and said, "Hey, we love your mission. We'd love to talk with you about partnering." And so I got to fly down and meet with the team and meet with Yvonne. I've had some really funny conversations with him over the years, and those are moments where you kind of have to pinch yourself, where you're sitting in Yvonne's office talking about product innovation and business and hard times, and so those kind of moments are certainly really, really impactful.
For companies starting today, I think sustainability, give back causes to our community, being eco-conscious, inclusive, all of those are critically important, and they're table stakes now. I mean, this is a conscious choice, but it's something that is sort of entry level for an entrepreneur today. Is it a choice anymore? I mean, do you see these as sacrifice, obligation, or opportunity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I hope people don't think this is a sacrifice to choose this model, or even kind of I have to do this. In a weird way, it's nice that people feel as though they have to do it, so that there's kind of this momentum that builds for the world to be better. I do think that at least from our experience, that for us to basically kind of really for it to be genuine. I think there's a whole. I'm trying to think, like it's table stakes, and yet people shy away because they go, oh well, it's not going to impact my customers. I think people think instantly that it has to be like Tom's, or it has to be this like consumer product company.
Great point.
And I don't think that's true. I think, again, kind of going back to kind of looking at yourself internally of how am I caring for my stakeholders, right? So my employees, my vendors, as an example. So we invite everybody throughout our supply chain into this model of generosity. As an example, we now have a baseline for any supplier that we work with, whether it's locally for screen printing or international, any of our manufacturers, that if they want to work with us, they now have to grant additionally with us, meaning that they have to put up $50,000 to start that model of generosity within their own community.
Wow.
And so, they've never seen this before. They're making product for Yeti and Hydro and all these, and every time MiiR comes to the table, they're like really excited because they're like, "Hey, check out this work we did at this local school," and they're fired up about it. And so we feel like there's this opportunity to change the model a bit, where others are kind of just going about their normal day-to-day lives of whatever that may be. But it doesn't always have to be forward-facing. It can be supply chain oriented. It could be tapping into your employees. It could be giving your employees time to volunteer during work hours. There's so many ways that you can really get your team involved. But it is becoming table stakes. And I think the reason why, part of it is, as we see a shoring up of talent in the marketplace, that companies have to get better, right? And I think we're seeing this in the promo space, that the quality of products, especially for those who are willing to buy kind of at the higher level, they want to treat their clients and their employees with nicer products. So I think similarly, when you recruit talent, you have to be able to say, we want to allow people to take time off to volunteer, or we give our own team. Right now, we start at $1,000. So every MiiR employee has $1,000 that they can direct to any 501c3 in the U.S. So we want even our own employees to think about generosity of like, hey, where would I direct this money? And the range of nonprofits is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. This ties really well into our business, because you and I talked about John Mackey's conscious capitalism, and he talked about the entire ecosystem. Promo Cares is an organization within our industry that connects suppliers and distributors with causes. And I can see distributors making those conscientious choices too. I think in our world, distributors are going to make more decisions based on supplier and partner selection with some of the criteria you talked about today. I had one question about something recently in the wake of the just horrific hate and then xenophobia against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the US. You and your team did something I thought was wise for all of us to consider. You didn't immediately react. You did respond very thoughtfully with a donation to the AAPI communities and causes. One statement that really stood out to me was a phrase that you wrote in a post or press release. You said, "We're not interested in performative allyship." Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a great, it's a hot topic these days, and
sure.
I don't know if we're getting it right, but we're trying our best to be authentic and to do it, how we view it. And it's interesting through social media these days that, the benefit is that we're exposed, and we all have cameras, and we can kind of film, all the things that are happening, good and bad, and sometimes it feels like more bad than good these days on social media. It's interesting. We took time internally, and so one of our ELT members, our executive team members, Tiffany. She's part of the Asian American community. She leads our impact process, and as we're kind of scrolling through social media, companies were very quickly making statements. Nothing wrong with making statements very quickly. And I checked in with a couple companies I know. I said, "Hey, that's awesome, you're making statements. What are you doing for your team, and what are you doing for your community?" And they were like, "We haven't figured that out yet." And it really, it gave me pause. And the reason it gave me pause is that we're so quick to talk about the things that we want to do or what we're against. And we challenge ourselves to say, hey, what are we for? Of course we're against racism. Of course we're for that, right? But just speaking that we're against racism does not solve racism, and while it can help spread awareness, we really took the time and said, hey, you know what? Let's check in with our team, and Tiffany was really passionate about this. And so that whole week, she was concerned. She had parents in the Bay Area, and for her, she wanted to check in with her family. So she checked in. The Asian American community within MiiR is quite strong. And Tiffany checked in with that entire group and just said, hey, if you need to take time, awesome. My executive coach is available for resource. We do Enneagram. And so there's a very tight-knit community. We said, hey, we have to resource our team first. Then let's figure out who we're going to grant to and why. And what is that going to look like? And let's invite our team in. And then we're going to go to social media and say, hey, here's what we have done, and here's what we're going to continue to do. But we got a lot of flack for it. I'll be honest. The instant reaction from some of our team members, and interestingly enough, it was white people saying, well, we haven't made a statement about Asian hate. Does that mean we don't care? And it was like, whoa. So we kind of had to reset the standard of saying, hey, we don't necessarily move at the speed of like instant Instagram. We want to And how vain is it? And we had an all company about this. How vain is it to go out and post before you take care of your own people? And so often I think about performative allyship of people are so quick to post so that they're not be seen as racist or that they don't care. And I don't know, we're really questioning, how do we go about actual change? And for us, we fundamentally believe, take care of our own people. Let's invite that actual people group into the conversation for a grant. Because who am I to say like the money should go here? I'm not Asian, And so I think that was, a really interesting moment of time of communicating to our company as to why we're not posting like day of, and taking our time to really think through how we want to be intentional about moving forward, and not just doing it because everybody else is doing it, And
Right.
It seems like social media is that way these days. Well, everybody's doing it, so we have to do it, right?
Yeah. I would love how you looked inward to your team for that advice, that it wasn't Bryan driving this. And also that I think we do have to respond rather than react, because it's just so difficult, as you said. One of the things that you did this past year was, speaking of your team, you mentioned that philanthropy should start at home. And you have seemed to have taken this focus back to your team over the past year pretty intensely. Lisa Picard from the amazing company EQ Office helped you and your team navigate through this ambiguous world of values. And what I love about this is that she came up with something far more practical and tactical to impact your team and your world, called practices. Can you explain the shift, what that means, but then the shift that occurred within you and your leadership team as you went from values-based organization to taking this into a practices approach?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is probably one of my favorite and best pieces of advice I've had in my entire career, and one that I'll take and I constantly give out, because it's so easy and it's so practical and useful. And so this is probably 5 or 6 years ago. We kind of were clarifying our values, and it was a whole 2-day, 3-day offsite with this consultant, and it was great. We landed on some really great values. And about a year or so later, we have this conversation with Lisa, and she was talking about, really values are something that kind of sit on your wall and they collect dust. Because if they're not living and breathing, they're just words, right? And I think the famous example is Enron had integrity as a value, and Enron clearly did not have integrity, right? The great irony there. And so, so there was this kind of flip and this switch of making sure that your values are actual practices. And so at MiiR, you can hear, like, if you were to tap into the Zoom calls or tap into the phone calls or the text message or the chats or the emails, you would hear our team communicate our practices, which is find a way, start with yes, enjoy the ride, and be open. And so you'll hear our team members, you'll hear a salesperson call a sales ops person and say, hey, Megan, I really appreciate you finding a way to get this for my customer. And I'm sure Gemline hears it, when they interact with our sales team of, hey, thanks for being open to our idea, or this concept. And so it's so simple. Like when Lisa said it, was like, this makes so much sense. And it takes time. We reward and measure performance management against those practices. So we highlight every 6 months when we sit down and do our performance reviews with our team members. Hey, really saw you lean into being open, and here's the example, right? And over 2020, we noticed that not many people were enjoying the ride. It was a brutal year, and so there were a whole host of things that we did internally. We developed this, 2020, and apart from the death and the business destruction and all the horrible things that have happened, 2020 was one of my favorite years. And the reason I say that is because there was so much opportunity for growth, personal growth, business growth, leadership development growth. And I spent a tremendous amount of time researching, reading, as there was downtime, to really shore up and think about how our culture interacts, and how we can basically empower our own team. Again, thinking about our team, so when we empower people for a better future, it's not just the stakeholders or the nonprofits, it's also our own team. And so we developed, through working with Pete Carroll at the Seahawks and some others, that there's this belief that we've come up with that there's 4 things that you can coach an individual, and it's mind, soul, body, and craft. And I'll say it again: mind, soul, body, and craft. Sometimes we go head and heart, but for us, we developed what we call the quadrant. And so each one of those quadrants, there's a touch point or a training exercise or a coaching opportunity for our team. And so, we weren't paying for an office this year. Our leases ended, unfortunately, in April of 2020. And so we said, let's pause. Let's put those dollars towards leadership development. My executive coach and the consultant that we work with runs a program called Managing with Heart and Mind. And so it's this idea that the mind and the heart are inextricably connected. And the more you can bring that connective tissue together and then lead with those connective tissues, you're going to have more empathy, you're going to have better communication, better feedback. And so everybody in the entire company, 5-day intensive course, not 5 days in a row. We kind of did like every other Friday, went through this whole Managing with Heart and Mind, really shoring up some of our leaders and their capacity to lead. We do Enneagrams. Our executive leadership team has done Enneagram for about 3 years now. And
I was going to ask you about that. Sam Cates is going to love this, but keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. So we do Enneagram as a company, and at first, my executive coach who leads that for our team was kind of like, gosh, the whole company, like, yeah, we've never done that before. But he's been trained in South Africa through an institute there, and it's really, really smart, really sharp guy. And he goes, let's give it a try. And so our team has just devoured it. I mean, they love it. It provides this common language, this understanding, builds. And I think the thing that's great about Enneagram is there's this belief that you have to build trust, but before you become vulnerable. And the science is actually showing us the opposite. And so at MiiR, I have to constantly focus on being vulnerable, whether I make a mistake, being open and transparent about decisions that I made or didn't make. So our conversations about, anti-Asian hates, stuff like that, being vulnerable leads to trust, not trying to build trust to then be vulnerable. And so similarly, Enneagram gives that opportunity because people have to kind of talk about why they might be this number and how they're going to shore up, what a healthy 3 looks like. And so anyway,
by the way, everyone's going to want to know, Bryan, what's your number? I'm a type 5. I'm a 4. What are you?
Oh, I'm a hardcore 3. I love being achieving, and speaking in front of people, but it's a 3 with a very close 7 right behind it on the scoring.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you get back to that. So Enneagram, Quad. How did all of that continue to really develop your leadership team? I love, by the way, one comment about Quad is I love this. That gives you a framework as a leader. Instead of just saying generally, how's our team doing? You now have a framework to say, how are they doing in these 4 areas?
Totally. Yeah. So it's, we do we have a mindfulness and meditation coach. We have a spring semester and a fall semester. And so it's an hour and a half every Friday. For 8 weeks, both spring and fall, and it's that part's optional. If people think it's too woo-woo, that's fine. But I love it. We use Made For, which is Blake Mykoski's new venture, and so it's a habit forming of 10 habits, 10 core habits. Like eating, drinking, sleep, gratitude, mindfulness, and so that one's optional as well. But really resourcing our teams, because if somebody can bring their whole self to work, they're gonna perform better, but it's also gonna be a much more enjoyable experience. So in kind of service to our practice, Enjoy the Ride, we want to resource our people, and we believe that all of our people are leaders. And so what we look at internally is leadership of self, leadership of others, and then leadership of company. And so when somebody is like, hey, I really want to be on a leadership team, or I want to eventually become like a leader of people, that's awesome. We love that. We want everybody to be a leader of themselves. And then we resource them to be able to do that. So everybody has, the availability to work on Enneagram one-on-one with our Enneagram coach. So those are kind of some things that came out of 2020, and I don't think would have happened if we hadn't had 2020. So in a weird way, I'm a big fan.
A couple of questions from the community. Danny Rosen, whom we're all big fans of here, is how is MiiR taking its amazing physical products and connecting them to community giving strategies in the digital world? Does that make sense?
Gosh, in the digital world, like what, like
I think just how are you translating your sales through digital experiences and give back? Is there any component related to this? I mean, how are you equating what happens in the digital world with the physical world?
Definitely. My Starbucks mug is full of coffee, but there's a give code on, there's a number on the bottom of this cup. And I'm really excited about the future here because, again, 2020, a lot like you go to Asia, QR codes everywhere. In America, pre-2020, people are like, what do I do with a QR code? Now everyone knows how to use a QR code.
Right.
We've been working on this COVID, but we have some of our new product that's coming out has a QR code on the bottom of every vessel. And so we've had a give code, since 2011. And this code is an invitation to our model of generosity. So what's really great is, we have millions of units going out a year, and people are able to come and register that code on our website. and look at our grant making process. We're opening up our entire supply chain over the next couple of years, as far as like, here are the standards, BSCI certified, fair trade, whatever factory has the pieces. We want to expose that to our customers and let them see, where did our factories grant, in China? What are they doing? Because it's so cool. So we have this really unique opportunity to connect all customers, whether somebody buys it from Gemline and then sells it to Staples and then sells it to Facebook. That Facebook end consumer has the opportunity to come back and actually see, the grant that we did to Seattle Bike Works to help get kids onto bicycles. So that's kind of like the digital component for MiiR that we love.
Yeah. I love it. You just shared, what a brilliant idea. Thank you for sharing that. You just shared that with several hundred people that are selling millions of mugs. So that idea is probably going to proliferate as we go along.
Love it.
Bryan, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you showing up again, not only just to talk about what MiiR is doing, but to be vulnerable enough to share the transition and challenges and struggles you've had with you in your leadership and how you've shifted. Man, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. And hopefully there were some tidbits for folks to take away. We love working with everybody in this industry and wish we could be in person, but thanks for having me. It's always fun to share what we're going through.
You bet, man. And for folks, tomorrow we're going to have a short guide ready for you based on our conversation with Bryan. It's going to include some fire starter questions for you and your team. It's going to be the guide about how to build a brand, a purpose-driven brand. You'll get that in your email. So thank you for showing up. Right now, we're going to shift to one-to-one networking. If you haven't joined us before, it's a fast lightning round where you're going to visit with the community one-to-one in little 2 to 3 minute segments. You'll introduce yourself, and what we want you to do today, we always want it to be purpose-driven. What we want you to do today is share what you are doing that is purpose-driven around your brand, what you're doing in your community, what you're doing to impact the world, what you're doing to impact your team. And if you're not doing anything yet, share what you think your vision might be. All right, share that with each other in the lightning round and to our entire community. And Bryan Papé, everyone, thank you for joining us for another wonderful conversation. Appreciate you, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You bet.